Hey, what's up YouTube? This is the Woman282 here again, and today's project is going to be pretty cool. It's going to be pretty quick. What we're going to be doing is installing LEDs inside the controller ports on an original Xbox. If you've seen the video where I show off the Xbox I modded for my girlfriend, you'll see it's got the purple LEDs in the controller ports on hers. Today I'm going to be installing yellow. So the great thing about this project is it's really easy to do. I mean, you really don't have to have a lot good soldering skills to actually pull this off. You just gotta have to take your time and just make sure you do it right the first time. So there's a lot of freedom with this project. You can make all your controller ports blue or green, orange, pink, whatever you want. You can even do different colors. So you can make it red, pink, orange, and blue if you want to. It's really up to you, whatever you want to do. So I'll show you guys the parts, the tools you're going to need, and also how to calculate the resistors that you need for your LEDs. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, so let's go over the stuff you're going to need to install LEDs in your Xbox controller ports. So first off, you're going to need your controller ports, and this is just one pair. There are two pairs in your Xbox, so go ahead and take those out. You're going to need either a low and high watt soldering iron, or if you have an adjustable temperature soldering iron, that'd be better. This is my this is my low 15 watt iron that I use for electronic soldering, and this is my really crappy 25 watt iron that I use for just soldering non-electronics, just bare metal pretty much. So what we have to do is actually desolder some of the casing on this, and we need an iron with a higher temperature in order to get the heat transferred onto the case. Depending on your casing here, you might need a razor blade, so that's optional, depends on what you have. You need some solder. Tweezers may come in handy. If you have some, go ahead and get them. If not, not really big deal. These are pretty optional, but I like to use them. You need some wire snips to cut off the leads on your components. If you have some resistors laying around and you don't know their rating, you can use a multimeter with a resistor setting, and you can measure the amount of ohms across a resistor and you can know if that's going to work in this project or not. If you already have resistors and you know their rating, you don't really need a multimeter. So last, you're going to need, of course, some resistors and LEDs. So this is just like a multi-pack of LEDs I got from China. This has got all kinds of different colors in there. Unfortunately, these are 7mm LEDs. They will work. They'll fit inside here, but you have to get a file and kind of file the casing down a little bit. 5mm LEDs would work a lot better. That's just less work. Unfortunately, I don't have any of those, so I'll just have to use the 7mm. But that's okay. I can make that work. And you're also going to need some resistors to go along with your LEDs. I can't really say what kind or what value you should get, because it really depends on the kind of LEDs that you have. Different LEDs, they have different voltage drops, they have different current ratings, so that kind of changes what your resistor value might be. A safe assumption would be maybe 3 or 350 ohms. I don't know if that's an actual resistor rating or not, but somewhere in that ballpark would be okay if you don't want to calculate it. But if you do want to calculate it, it's very easy. I'll show you an online tool that does it for you. Basically, you just input the information that you already know. It'll tell you what kind of resistor you need. Very, very simple. So overall, this is what you need to install LEDs in your control ports. So let's move on to that website I was talking about just a second ago, and I'll show you how to calculate the resistor values that you might need. Alright everybody, just real quickly, let's go over how to calculate the resistance you need to power your LED for this one project. So if you go to ledcalc.com, it's kind of like a tool that you put your known values in, and it'll give you a resistor value for that. So it brings you right here to the guru. So your supply voltage in this case, since we're powering it off of the controller port, it'd be 5 volts. And our voltage drop across the LED is going to be different for whatever LED you use. In my particular one, it's I think it's around 3 volts, or excuse me, 2 volts or something like that. If I go down here and open this up, this is the data sheet for my LEDs, and I got this from the seller on eBay that I bought them from. But I'm using yellow LEDs, and the forward voltage drop is between 1.9 and 2.1, so it's about 2 volts. If you were using a different color LED, it would probably be different. So for your LEDs, just make sure you have the data sheet for those, because it's probably going to be different. Usually it's around 3 volts if you have one of the a higher, or excuse me, if you have green, blue, white, pink, or purple. But for yellow and red, usually it's around 2 volts. Some green LEDs also have 2 volts. It kind of depends. But again, just look at your data sheet and it should tell you that. It should tell you the forward voltage. So mine is 2 volts. So I'm going to put a 2 volts voltage drop across there. And the milliamps, again, go to your data sheet. The milliamp draw on this yellow LED is 20 milliamps. And so it is letting us put it in. It is milliamps right here, as you can see. So we're going to put 20. And we're only connecting one LED. You could do 2 if you really wanted to. It wouldn't really matter. So we're going to click the button to calculate our resistance that we need. So by the math, our exact resistance calculated is 150 ohms. There's no such thing as a 150 ohm resistor. The nearest higher rated one is 180. So to get the maximum brightness out of your LED, you would use 180 ohms. I don't have 180 ohms on hand. I think I have 200 ohms or 300 ohms. I think that's the one I use. So that'll work just fine. You probably won't be able to tell a drop in the brightness of the LED. So yeah, 200 or 300 ohms will work just fine. As long as you don't go below 180 for this application, you're perfectly fine. Now here's another option. If you want your LEDs to be dimmer, then you just increase the resistance rating, and you can kind of test that. If you have like a breadboard, you can test that inputting different resistor values. So yeah, we just need 180 ohms, and it recommends us a 1/8 watt power rating on that resistor. You can use 1/8. You can also use 1/4 watt. I'm using 1/4 watt in the video. If you go higher, it doesn't matter. You can't go, I don't think you can go less than 1/8 watt. So if you have just 1/4 watt, perfectly fine. Awesome. So yeah, this is a just really, really awesome website on how to calculate resistance values for powering LEDs or anything really. But again, it is nice if you have the data sheet for your LEDs, and usually this is provided to you by either the seller where you buy your LEDs, or the manufacturer's website. So yeah. So we just calculated on the computer there that we needed 180 ohm resistor as a minimum. So these resistors I have here, I'm not real sure of the rating. I could look at the color codes and figure it out, and I have done that, and it's kind of hard to tell. These aren't painted very well, so it's kind of hard to tell, which direction they go. So I'm just going to use my multimeter here with the ohm setting, and just going to use my leads and test it. So if I just put my leads across one resistor here, you can see we have about 200 ohms, so that's a 200 ohm resistor. That'll work perfectly fine. It's close enough to 180 ohms, no issue. So the first step is we need to get the housing off of the controller port. So if you flip this over, there's actually this metal housing that we need to take off, and this is like a 2-piece shielding or whatever. The bottom part comes off this top part, and it's soldered on to these two edges right here. Now you'll run it into two kinds of solder joints. You either have a solder joint here on the tab, or you have one here on this edge right here. And if you have the joint on the tab, this is going to be a little bit easier for you. If you have if you have the joint on the edge, it's more difficult. So if you do happen to have the joint on the tab here, it's really easy to dismantle. All you have to do is take your razor blade, shim it into the top of the metal like that, in between where the two pieces meet, and then while that's shimmed in there, you take your iron, heat that joint, and you're gonna push that razor blade down, and it's gonna separate the two pieces of metal, and you're done. It's very easy. Unfortunately, I have this one with the joint on the top, and you can't get a razor blade and the iron in this area at the same time, because there's just not enough room. So what I do, I just take this tool right here that I've got, and I just kind of shim it in right there, and then I'll take my iron and heat that joint, and while I'm pressing down, it should separate like that. It's not always that easy. This time it was. Depends on how much solder's in there and how much solder's actually, you know, solidified down into this joint here. But anyway, do that for both sides. And once you get both sides desoldered, you can go ahead and take off this bottom part. So once you've got that bottom part desoldered on both edges here, you can just flip it over and just kind of use your fingernail to slide that right off. And then here we have the connections to the motherboard header that connects the controller port to the motherboard. So here's a quick printout. Red is 5 volts, white and green are data, yellow is not used generally unless you have a light gun, and then black is ground. So in this setup, what we're going to be doing is just using the 5 volts in the ground. So the way I like to install the LED and the resistor in here is I'll connect the resistor here to 5 volts, of course. Then I'll bend the resistor in such a way it lays here in this open area, and the lead will come up, go to the LED which sits here in the middle, and then the LED will come back down and go here to ground. So I'll go ahead and bend my resistor in such a way that it's going to lay in this open area, and then we'll go ahead and solder that in. Alright, so there we go. Just kind of bend it around like that, and it's just going to lay in this area, and then you can see the one lead of it will solder right there to the solder point on 5 volts, and the resistor will sit right in there. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm just going to lay the resistor in about right there, and then just solder this guy in. That's a temporary hold, and get a little bit more solder. Okay. Alright, so there's our resistor soldered in. And now all we have to do is take our lead and bend it up in such a way that it will solder to our LED here. So I think I'll just bend it at a 90-degree angle here, kind of like that, and then take my LED and notice I've bent the cathode at a 90-degree angle, and it's just going to lay right in there. And that's a temporary hold right there, but it gives us an idea of how this is going to work. So what I'll do is I'll just give that a better joint, and then I'll snip off this top piece and then this side piece, and just kind of bend this joint in a little bit so it doesn't touch the shielding. And then we'll bend this lead around and attach it here to the ground. Alright, so as you can see here, I took that lead, bent it around backwards, kind of put it down at like maybe a 30 or 45 degree angle, and then just soldered it there to the black lead there. So just going to snip off these two little leads here, and then we'll bend the leads in a little bit. So just snip that off, and then we'll snip this off. And then I'm going to add a little bit more solder to this. There we go. And there we go. It looks pretty good. So I'll just bend this in a little bit. And as you can see, the top part should slide on there pretty good. My LED, honestly, my LED is too big. I don't have a smaller one, but what you can do is you can take a file and just kind of file it down out here a little bit if you want to. You also do the same here on the bottom edge, just to flatten it out a little bit. But that should fit in there okay. I might have to do a little bit of modding to the LED to flatten it down. Okay, so I did try to put that case back on, and as I thought, it wasn't going to fit. So I took a file and I just went ahead and filed down the top and bottom edges of the LED here. Got rid of that lip that's around the LED, and fits a lot better now. So again, I just you know, soldered it back in because I had to take the LED out, but I just soldered it back in, cleaned it up a little bit. And the LED fits in there nicely now, so yeah, it's pretty flush. And so yeah, I just cleaned up that joint a little bit, push it in. So now we can take the case, and it'll slide right on there, and we're good to go. We just gotta solder these two tabs back on, and that controller port will be finished. So when you get done with the installation, you should have something that looks like this. You should have the resistor connecting to the red wire. It goes up and connects to the anode on the LED, and then it goes over and connects to the ground wire. So we're just going to solder these two edges back here on, just like that. So we'll do that one, and then we'll do this other edge. There we go. So that controller port's done. Now we just gotta move on to the other three, and go ahead and get them installed back in the Xbox. Turn it on, see how it looks, and we'll be done with the controller port mod. So here we got it connected into the Xbox temporarily, and here's our installation here. So if I just go ahead and turn the Xbox on here, see the LED lights up, and you can also see it through the controller port there. And I'll switch the light off real quick. And it looks pretty cool. So yeah, we know the LED works because we calculated the the resistors that we needed based on the facts we had. So we'll just go ahead and do the same thing to the rest of the controller ports. We got 3 more. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. Very simple to do. Just install the LED and the resistor, just like that, and you're good to go. Pretty simple. Alright guys, so we are done with the mod. I've got the Xbox put back together, and I'll go ahead and show you what it looks like. So I'll just go ahead and hit these lights here. And I'll just hit the power button. And I've got the ring of light set to orange with the BIOS configuration. And as you can see, it's orange or yellow. It looks pretty good. Hit the lights again, and you can kind of see looks pretty good. There's some dim light. Dim light looks really good actually, and you can really look in there and see those LEDs in there. For some reason the ring of light looks green. I guess it's the camera. It is actually orange. But overall, I think it turned out pretty good. So that's it, guys. I appreciate you watching. I hope you guys learned something here today. Overall, this is a pretty easy mod. So go have fun.